I'm James Morrison, and I'm putting together a band to do a recording. Now, I've got all the players, great players too, but I don't have any instruments. So, I've made a list. I'm going to need a lot of stuff. I need trumpets, trombones, saxophones, clarinets. So I need to go somewhere where I can get everything from the one place. I'm going to duck down to the Yamaha factory at Hamamatsu, see what they've got lying there. Well, let's see. I need a bunch of brass first, trumpet, cornet, trombones, all sorts of stuff. So let's start with the trumpet. Now this is where they make the trumpets, so I should be able to find what I need here. Look, there's lots of them. None of those are finished. I need one with valves, I know that. Oh, this looks good. He could be a while. They're getting more and more finished as we move along. Here's the valves, but I'm going to need them in the trumpet. Well, at least I know when I get one it's going to be good because every single trumpet is tested. Ah, finished trumpets. That's what we need. I'll just take one. This feels good. Oh yeah. I want this one. Is that okay? I'll just take it. How did this get to be so good? So how does a flat piece of metal like this turn into a beautiful bell like that? Well, it starts with a lot of skill. Well, after all that hammering, the bell has to be spun, and it takes years of experience to know just how much pressure to use to coax this metal into such a gorgeous shape. Have a look at this. Well, there are a lot of beautiful curves in an instrument like this, and one of the main ones is here, the crook, where the bell comes around. But how do you bend a piece of metal like this without it breaking or crimping? Well, they fill the bell with another metal that's softer, then bend it with a special machine, and then just melt the other metal out. Looks like magic. Now, of course, not all the processes here are done by hand. Some of them are done by some very clever machines. For instance, this has got to turn into that, There are 200 models of mouthpiece here, and this one machine can do them all. Have a look at this. The valves on every Yamaha trumpet are just beautiful to play. One of the things that makes them so good is the valve case being very precise. What's happening here is each valve case is put together in a jig with some silver solder paste on it. And you've got to know just how much to use, and then it's put into an oven, and at about 1300 degrees Fahrenheit, it's baked. This kind of glues the valve case together. You end up with that. Another reason the valves feel so good on this trumpet is that the valve piston from the inside there has to be just perfect. And what they do after it's manufactured is a thing called valve lapping. It's kind of like a really, really fine polish. This machine does it right every time. No wonder it's so good. I need a cornet too, and I noticed one over here. Yamaha trombone slides are absolutely amazing to play, and one of the main reasons for that is Mr. Nakamura sits here for hours each day making each individual slide perfect. I want to play that one. Anyway, I need more than a slide. I've got to find a whole trombone. Aha. This is what I need. Perfect. I'm going to need a bass trombone too, so I'll just grab one while I'm here. Now this looks like a straight piece of metal of uniform thickness, but it's nowhere near straight enough for a Yamaha trombone slide. This machine here is going to turn this into that. Once all the individual pieces have been manufactured, it's time to assemble the instruments. It takes a tremendous amount of skill to know just how much solder to use and how hot to make the metal to get a perfect finish. Another thing worth noting is that Yamaha is the only instrument manufacturer in the world that uses lead-free solder to care for the environment. Let me see, I need an alto sax and a tenor sax. Tenor, alto, they're all in the plastic. Ah, there's one in the case. That might be. Oh yeah. Custom. These are real nice. You know, the saxophone, even though it's made out of brass, is called a woodwind instrument. I guess that's because the sound is made with wood, you know, with a reed, unlike a trumpet. Then again, maybe I'm wrong. That's going to be perfect. Now I just need a tenor. I know there's a tenor around here somewhere. Look at the concentration going on with these workers. The pads are such a perfect fit. I was wondering how they do it. Have a look. He puts a yellow light down the saxophone, and if there are any leaks at all, light will come out. Just keeps adjusting it until it's absolutely spot on. With the precision of the beautiful engraving on the bell of the Pro and Custom model saxophones, I always assumed they were done by a machine, but in fact they're not. They're done by hand, and each and every one is different. It's almost like a fingerprint. I wonder which one of these guys did mine. Well, I knew the lacquer on Yamaha instruments wasn't brushed on because the finish is just way too good. I thought it'd be sprayed on, but even that doesn't give you a finish this good. It's electrostatic plating. What they do is put a negative electric charge through the instrument, and then there's just a mist of lacquer in the air, and because of that charge it adheres evenly all over for a perfect finish every time. Now the bells and the bodies of the saxophones are made much the way that other brass instruments are, with hammering and spinning, but after that it's where they really get different. A saxophone, there's all this mechanism to put on, all the pieces. I had a Meccano set when I was a kid. It looked something like this, but I don't think I'd want to try this. I'm looking for a tenor sax. I think I'm in the wrong section. I don't have a flute in the band, but I wish I did. Have a look at this. I thought I'd seen all the really cool machines here, but this is amazing. What it does is turn this into this. And it's not just drilling holes, it actually draws the metal out to make those beautiful tone holes that stand up from the body of the flute. So cool. It's the only one in the world. This man is hand polishing the tone hole on flute head joints. Why is that so significant? Well, because this year Yamaha made their 10 millionth wind instrument, and over a third of those were flutes. Each one hand finished, each one personally tested. You might wonder why they take such care with them. Well, one of the reasons is that over 60% of Yamaha's workers are actually instrumentalists themselves and play these instruments. You know, speaking of flutes, Yamaha makes more flutes than anybody else in the world. So if you see someone playing a flute, it's most likely a Yamaha. And the smallest of those flutes is the piccolo. Altos, altos, tenor. Perfect. I'm sure they won't mind if I just borrow this. Well, I found the clarinets, well, kind of. This is a 400-year-old piece of grenadilla wood. It'll be spun into a clarinet bell and then aged here for another 3 years before he finally gets made into an instrument. There sure are a lot of them. I've been looking for where they make the clarinets at last. That's not a clarinet. That's an oboe. Excuse me, can you tell me where they make the clarinets?
Oh, no. Over there.
Over there. Thank you. Thank you. It's very nice. You know, oboes are a small instrument. They actually got hundreds of parts in them. Yamaha doesn't just make oboes and clarinets, they make the full range of woodwinds. I could just find the clarinets. Nearly finished. Had to make my own one of these. It's not true. All I need now is a bass clarinet. One, two, three, four. Maybe not. Now, Yamaha trombone slides are absolutely... Wait, 1 sec. Easy.
How did you first become interested in music?
Well, I started on the piano when I was 6, but that only lasted about 6 months because I didn't like the songs. You know, Merrily We Roll Along, it's kind of hard to make it swing. And then when I was 7, I joined the brass band at school, and that's really when it all started. I did go back to the piano about a year later, but and still play it now. But yeah, I started playing the cornet in a brass band when I was 7. I first heard jazz by the time I was 8 and got right into that. I had my own jazz band when I was 9. And I guess by the time I was 10, I'd pretty much taken up all of the instruments I play today.
Do you recommend young students learn to improvise?
I think it's great to learn to improvise. I mean, we all improvise anyway, all the time. When we speak, you know, all day we're improvising. The freedom you get and the joy it brings from doing it on an instrument is well worth the effort.
You play almost all instruments. Do you have a favourite?
I don't really have a favourite instrument. If I did, I could stop carrying around all that other stuff. My favourite instrument is whichever one I'm playing at the time. I just really get like that about it. If I'm playing something, that sound is all-encompassing, and yeah, I guess that's why I'm a multi-instrumentalist.
What advice can you give young students starting out?
I sometimes get asked by young students particularly, you know, how much should I practice? And I always just answer them, how good would you like to be? Because really, the more time you spend playing your instrument, the better you get at it. A wise man once said, repetition is the mother of skill. And I've never liked sitting in a room practicing, as in just doing scales or working on something, but I love sitting in a room playing. And of course, it's the same thing, just a different attitude. The more time you spend playing your instrument, the better you get.
Do you have any advice on how to select an instrument?
When you first start out, it's almost not that important what instrument you play. You're learning about music as much as you are about the instrument. But once you've been playing for a little while, it's important the instrument you play is one that really makes your heart sing. You know, you should hear that instrument played by a great musician and go, oh, that is the sound I have to make. Because if you're passionate about it, all the work that's involved, all the things along the way you have to get through won't be a problem, because you'll have that sound in your head and in your heart that you want to make. It'd be very hard, I don't know if it's even possible, to become a great musician on an instrument that you don't really love.
How did you become involved with Yamaha?
I played various different instruments, makes of instrument when I started out, and they were mainly whatever the school had that gave me. Back in those days was all sorts of things. But the first instrument I bought of my own, I saved up from giving trumpet lessons actually, and doing odd jobs, and then I bought my own Yamaha trumpet, a student model. And so I still have that horn. It's a little beaten up now. It's very old, and it's had a hard life. But it was the first instrument I bought of my own, and I remember thinking at the time how well made it was and how it felt, and I thought, oh, this is going to be great. And it was right. And over the years, I've had a number of Yamaha instruments. And I guess the thing I liked when I first sort of officially had some connection with Yamaha was the attitude they had. There were other instrument companies that I've been contacted by and had associations with, and the thing that struck me about Yamaha was the people seemed really interested in the music that the instruments made, not just in the pieces of machinery that the instruments are. And that felt different, and it's been a long association, and I'm sure it will have many years to go yet.
Can you talk a little about the difference between inexpensive and professional model instruments?
I mean, when you're first starting out, your parents probably don't want to spend a whole lot of money. That first trumpet I bought was a Yamaha student model, it wasn't the pro model. And it's a lot of money, and it's not necessary to have a pro model when you start. But what is necessary is to have an instrument that's in tune and that's well made and plays well, plays evenly. And sometimes kids, if they get too cheap an instrument when they start and it's not well made and it doesn't play well, that can be discouraging, and they could give it up, and then their parents would go, well, it's just as well we didn't spend the money. But it might have been a self-fulfilling prophecy. I think also it's a little bit of a fallacy to try and save money by buying a really cheap instrument. I think you'll never get your money back on a cheap, bad instrument. But if you buy a student model Yamaha, and for some reason a kid does, not everyone becomes a musician. They don't stay with it. You'll get your money, but someone will want that instrument always because it's well made. So it's better all around to start with something really decent.
What were your impressions of Yamaha's factory?
From my dealings with Yamaha people in Australia and, I guess mainly sort of marketing people and so on, I got this impression that there was this interest in the music, not just in the instruments. Well, I kind of found out where that came from when I first visited the factory, because I had in my mind this picture of hundreds of robots, building instruments. It's like that idea of like a Japanese car factory, and very impersonal feeling. And it couldn't have been further from the truth. Here were all these people making instruments. They use some machines, sure, but mainly it's people. And what really wowed me was when they knock off work, 60% of them go and play in a Yamaha band. That makes a difference to the feel of the instrument.
You recommend Yamaha to students. Why is that?
One of the things that's great about playing Yamaha instruments and owning Yamaha instruments is the consistency of the quality. If you go and try your friend's Yamaha trumpet, model 6335, and you say, wow, I really like that, and you order the same one, it will be just the same because they're so consistent. You don't get that disappointment, which you can get with other makes of instrument where you try one and there's a good one, but it's like one out of a batch, and you have to wait for that magic horn to come along again. With Yamaha, they're all magic horns.
Most musicians feel an intimate relationship with their instrument. But what about you? You play so many.
Being a multi-instrumentalist, people ask me, how do you practice all those instruments, or how do you get really familiar with so many instruments? I know some great players, who sleep with their instrument practically. It's not like that for me. The instruments are tools, And when I'm making music, I feel like the music is just coming from me and going straight to the audience. It's an emotional thing. Having said that, though, for that to happen and for the instrument to not get in the way, it does have to be a really superb tool. If it has imperfections, then you start noticing the instrument. And I find with my instruments, they're just not there when I'm playing. It's a great feeling.
Do you have any comments about being a Yamaha artist?
I've sometimes had students come up to me and say, well, you're a Yamaha artist. Of course, they give you all those instruments, I'd be one too. And I pointed out to a guy once who just bought himself a very expensive trumpet. And he thought that I just played the Yamahas because they gave them to me. And I said, do you think I would spend my life playing every night on an instrument that was anything less than what I could have? Because I'm lucky, I can have any trumpet I want. I play Yamahas because I chose them. And just quite frankly, no, they don't give me the instruments. I get a good deal, but I chose to play Yamaha.
Do you have any advice for students on how to practice?
It's funny, young musicians might spend hours each week practicing, and they might not perform at all that week. I mean, their ratio of practice to performance, to actually playing music, might be 20 to 1. You imagine if anything else was like that. How many people would play soccer if you said, no, we're going to lace up our boots for an hour, then we're going to polish the ball, then we're going to talk about how we do it, we're going to learn this, and you only got to play soccer like once every few weeks for a 20th of the time you spent getting ready. No one would do it. It's amazing with music that we do. And my advice is to make sure you play more. I don't mean to practice less, but look for chances to play, to get together and make music with people. It doesn't have to be a performance that someone's organised. Get together with a friend and play some tunes. Don't just sit there practicing all the time. The joy in this music is when you play it, not when you get ready to play it.
Can you talk a little about the different genres of music you play?
I'm really lucky. I get to play all different kinds of music. I'm considered a jazz musician, and I consider myself a jazz musician primarily, but I do a number of classical concerts each year, and I get to play solos or even put horn sections on pop albums and rock albums, and I do all sorts of stuff, movie scores, and it's just wonderful playing good music. I like to quote Louis Armstrong. When he first heard rock and roll, he got interviewed, and they said to him, what do you think? Is this good or is it bad music? And I thought, what's he going to say? And Louis said, there's no such thing as good and bad music, just good and bad musicians. Which is so true.
What is it like to travel so much?
It's funny, I never thought of it as a glamorous life, being a jazz musician. The classic jazz musician's life is not supposed to be glamorous. It's supposed to be full of trials and tribulations. But in actual fact, it is very cool. I've been all around the world many times and been to all sorts of countries I may never have visited if I wasn't a musician. And it gets a bit tiring, the travelling. We're only 7 months of the way through a year at the moment, in which I've been to Europe from Australia 14 times. And 4 times to the States and several times to Asia. I don't know, it's like a flight every 10 days or so internationally. And that gets tiring. But when you get there, you get to play music to people. I mean, if I was travelling around the world to do a tax audit, I'd probably give it up. But when you go through all that rigmarole of getting places, you get there and you get to play music and people smile, and that makes all those long flights worth it. Now my accountant's going to see that and go, what's wrong with doing a tax audit?
You do a lot to support music education. Why is music so important to you?
I started playing in a brass band when I was 7 years old. And I look back now at all the people who were in that band and what they might be doing today. And some of them became musicians. There's about 3 of us actually out of that band who became professional musicians. Some of them still play, and it's a joy for them for the rest of their life to be musicians. They play on weekends in other bands, and it enriches their lives. Some of them gave up music when they left school. But here's the thing. Everybody who played in that band knows what it's like to be a musician. And even the ones who gave up when they left school, they'll never hear music the same again. When they hear any music, they hear it as someone who's played. And that changes your life. And the experience they had while they were in the band, you get teamwork and you get to strive for excellence. They're all things you can do playing a sport. But they get to do it while they were being creative as well. And it's a very special bond that a band forms. And again, that stays with you for the rest of your life. So I think it's vitally important that everybody gets to play an instrument. It's not to do with whether you're going to be a musician or whether you're so-called musical. Everybody gets to kick a ball. Everybody gets to swing a bat and try that. Everybody should get an instrument and know what it's like to play music. Yeah, they'll never be the same.
I understand you are involved with several youth bands. How did this come about?
I love being involved with music education. People say it's great that you put something back by spending time with youngsters, but I don't see it like that at all. It's a thrill for me and an inspiration to watch young people learning to play music and to see them advancing. And they're very inspirational to me. I'm the patron of, I don't know, about a dozen bands, and I have a scholarship each year for a jazz soloist. And I'm involved in all sorts of festivals and things that go on that support youth music in Australia and overseas. And I just can't do enough of it because it brings a smile to your face.
Do you consider digital instruments to be as legitimate as acoustic ones?
I think it's funny that people sometimes draw a line between acoustic and electric instruments. It's like, you know, and depending on what their preferences are, these are the real ones or not, you know. It's so strange. If you're walking down a corridor and there's practice rooms and you look through the window and you see some guys playing an acoustic piano and saxophone and a guitar, and they sound really good, you say, wow, those guys can really play. And then you go down to the next room and you see some guys with some keyboards, synthesizers, some electric instruments, and it sounds awful. And you say, wow, those instruments are horrible. Isn't that funny? You were right in the first room. The guys can really play. In the second one, it should have been those guys can't play, because instruments don't make music. And there's no difference between an electronic instrument and an acoustic one. They're just ways of making sound. A trumpet is a machine. As is a synthesizer, as is a clarinet, as is, well, a digital trumpet, which I've been involved in developing recently. It's musicians that make the music. And if you make great, creative, emotional, musical choices, and you happen to be sitting at a synthesizer or you happen to be holding a bassoon, you're going to get great, creative, emotional music.
Many musicians play more than one style of music. Can you comment on the different musical genres?
Yeah, the real delineation between styles or genres of music seems to be disappearing with each passing year. And now, you know, what does jazz mean? I mean, there's so many things. What does rock mean? What is classical music now? You listen to some free jazz and some modern classical music and tell me the difference. You know, and I think it's a good thing these boundaries are disappearing. We don't have to be pigeonholed into what kind of artist are you or what kind of music is this. The music can speak for itself. That's led to some great projects. One of them, I've done a series of albums with the wonderful Hollywood composer and jazz musician, classical conductor Lalo Schifrin. He's called this series Jazz Meets the Symphony. And he really does meld jazz music and symphonic music together in such a way that it's now really neither, yet it's both. And it's an exciting time to be a musician.
Do you recommend young students imitate the styles of musicians they admire?
One of the questions I often get asked by young musicians who are playing jazz and improvising is it okay to copy someone else, but then won't I just sound like them? What happened to you? They ask me. And the first thing is, if you hear someone, I heard Dizzy Gillespie and I wanted to sound just like Dizzy, well, you go for it, because you know, there's nothing wrong with trying to sound like Dizzy Gillespie or any great jazz musician. And inevitably, you won't end up sounding like them anyway. And I noticed over the years, no matter what influences I had and who I tried to copy because I loved their playing, you end up being a mixture of everything you've ever heard plus that other thing that makes it you. So just keep playing, and if something takes your fancy, then yeah, play that way. you'll find it's a journey, and my sound is still changing, my style is still changing, and I imagine it will for many years to come. It's a journey, not a destination.